welcome to the Solar Coaster, a renewable energy themed talk show right here in lovely Maui County. Aloha and welcome to the Solar Coaster live show here in Ma'alaia in Maui with Chuck Collins of the Hawaii Hydrogen Alliance. How are you doing today, Chuck?
Hey, I'm doing great, thanks. Aloha, thanks for joining us.
It is so fun to be back here with a rooster right under the tailgate, real Maui style. Hopefully he'll walk by in a second. We have the wind farm in Ma'alaia 2 hour left. We're going to pan to that in a second. We've got the Hitachi EV charging station from years past, the beginnings of some very interesting kind of, there he is, some cultural and kind of the mindset of Maui and why right now with NREL modeling a 100% renewable energy grid on wind and solar for 2024, what the heck is that?
Very exciting time.
It's a cool time to be here with you, man. I'm so glad that I met you and that Doug McLeod and Michelle, and we got our rooster in the scene right here.
Live audience.
So I want you to give people a sense of what's going on in Maui and where you see hydrogen going.
Sure, so it's a very exciting time, much like Josh was talking about with regard specifically to renewables. Hydrogen is coming to the front as a energy resource that can be very versatilely produced and used, not only in the transportation sector through fuel cell vehicles, but also potentially on the grid and also in buildings and some other applications. So because we're in Hawaii, we want to focus on electrolysis of seawater, which is one of the primary goals of the Hawaii Hydrogen Alliance, is to educate folks about the primary purpose of electrolysis of seawater so that we can use it and gain the benefits of creating hydrogen from seawater.
This is, and what an amazing time. Right now you can see, okay, here it's 2021, August, summer, post-pandemic, moving into the new area of the pandemic. But Maui is coming into its own in terms of one of the first 100% renewable energy grids in the world, right? We're very, very close to that. You can see in the background here the white caps. This is actually a beautiful section of Maui, Molokini in the distance. We've got the aquarium here with its own solar panels on it. So we're surrounded by the concept of renewable energy. This is an environment that was once completely sustainable and supported 1 million plus people back in the ancient days of Hawaii, right? So now we're talking about the most abundant opportunity in a sense, the most abundant element in the universe, and the most abundant opportunity for us here, given the fact that we're surrounded by all of this H2O. We're interested in the H piece of this puzzle. So tell us what you think. Where do you think hydrogen is going to play a role in Maui specifically, in Hawaii specifically?
Well, just from a practical standpoint, much like Josh was talking about, one of the reasons why solar and renewables has had so much success here is because the amount of renewable energy that we have to convert to electricity. So the wind constantly blows on Maui. We have a lot of sunshine compared to other places on the planet. And so if those two things are the primary fuel to create electricity, then what a great place to prove those technologies and get them deployed out to the field, get runtime, learn from those technologies so that we can deploy them elsewhere in the world where the economics may not be as good and the resource to create electricity may not be as good. Now, one of the things that's really pushed us to the forefront of hydrogen here in Hawaii is climate change is very real for us. While we may not wake up in Shanghai and Los Angeles and other places where we have dirty air, our sea levels are rising, which does affect our coastlines. This affects a lot of the building and development that we've done here in Hawaii. And so in order to combat a lot of the fossil fuel, a lot of the reasons why we've gotten into this situation in the first place is because of overburning of fossil fuels. So hydrogen has a direct place to offset fossil fuels and create basically clean energy, whether it's for transportation, grid use, or for individual buildings. One of the beautiful things about Hawaii is that we're surrounded by seawater. So much like the solar story before, where we're surrounded by solar almost 6 or 7 hours a day, we are surrounded by seawater 24 hours a day. So if that's going to be a good fuel for us to look at, then that makes a lot of sense for Hawaii as far as a fuel for hydrogen. Water is really just hydrogen, two hydrogens in a water. H2O. And so what we're looking to do is free up the hydrogens so that we can store it, so that we can use it to help displace the remaining sets of fossil fuels that exist here on the islands.
sounds like hydrogen has an opportunity to push us from that, 70-80% mark, which we are inevitably going to hit like a rocket ship of, renewable energy offsetting, into the 100% mark. It seems like the firm capacity of hydrogen is potentially a key to unlock the true 100% renewable energy living environment. Is that the way you look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, many years ago when the RPS here was passed, the Renewable Portfolio Standard was passed here in Hawaii, a lot of questions were raised as to how we were going to get from 70 to 100%, because a lot of folks knew at the time that lithium-ion batteries and solar PV and wind was not really going to get us there. And I think while lithium-ion and PV and wind has moved considerably in the last 10 to 15 years, it's still not really going to get us to 100%, at least on some of the bigger island grids that we have. And so hydrogen presents a way to help us not only get to 100%, but also could act as a better way to store electricity sometimes, as a better fuel to fuel our transportation. And again, it's much more versatile. We can use it for maritime as well as air transport as well, because we have a heavy demand for jet fuel and diesel here due to the military and the crossover air international flights that we have on Honolulu. So there's really a lot of opportunities besides just plugging hydrogen into fuel cell vehicles and into the grid. We can actually start to go after some of those tougher to reach markets, because our hydrogen production costs will be lower, because again, we're surrounded by a fuel that can be easily converted. And with the prevalence of PV and wind on our grid today and the cost coming down so rapidly, we feel like this is a winning strategy, and the time is now.
All right, so we didn't come out here, thank you for that, by the way, that was awesome. We didn't come out here just to sit in the wind. By the way, it's always like this in Ma'alaya. That's probably why they put those big, beautiful windmills up there, constantly blowing, right? And it's 10, what is it, out by 7, back by 11, the sailor's language, right?
Yes.
We're breaching in on around 11 right now. It's going to continue to ramp up the wind. We're here for a reason, though, because Chuck, he said something very interesting in Hawaii Energy Conference. He said, this is about projects getting deployed.
Right.
This is what needs to happen. We're here where a project is going to be deployed, and I want you to tell everybody here at Solar Power International and anybody else who's watching this thing, what is your concept for this particular environment?
So the Hawaii Hydrogen Alliance, the primary goal is education and awareness. We want to make hydrogen a more common term in whether it's commercial or industrial or even hopefully residential sectors. The common household speaking the language of hydrogen. We would love that. But in the interim, what we need to do is produce projects, because nothing speaks louder for awareness than real projects that people can see, people can read about, and people can actually drive up and look at. So across the islands, we've indicated a number of sites where we can produce electrolyzer-based hydrogen production stations, where we will basically take seawater and produce hydrogen from that, store it on site, and then use it in a dispensing station to go directly either into fuels or into a fuel cell, where it then powers either a vehicle or a building. And so from soup to nuts right there, we just went from the fuel itself to the end use. We never drilled a single hole in the ground. We never transported anything into the state. All of the economics are right here, and it's such a beautiful story, because for every vehicle that we can get off the road, for every gallon of gasoline, we're displacing 9 pounds of carbon per gallon.
Wow, it feels like we are on the cusp of a hydrogen revolution. That's the way it feels. And we just came off of this 60-day trip around the country. It's so good to be back in Maui. And once again, it feels like Maui's the place where it's happening so early, right? There's this sense of this environment, Maui, Hawaii, but Maui in particular, Maui no Koi, right? So Maui in particular, where it's like are we a test bed for renewables? Are we the next Silicon Valley of renewable energies? Is this a place where companies are going to want to be here to make things happen for the rest of the world, to show it's possible?
For a long time, we've been a proving ground for renewable energy technologies and energy efficiency technologies, because the cost of electricity here kind of predicates that the economics work out. And so if this is going to be a deployment center for technologies that were developed in labs and in commercial factories, then what a great place to deploy this stuff in. The renewables, specifically the renewable technologies, we've been able to drive down costs for renewable technologies on a whole because of the deployment strategies that we've seen in places like Hawaii, where the island has, again, a lot of sunshine. The weather environment is not exactly kind on solar modules, as well as wind turbines. We've sent a lot of wind turbines back to factories saying, look, this is what's happened after 10 years. Learn from this. So again, Hawaii's not only been a test ground for the technologies themselves, but also on the integration of renewables into a grid system. A lot of laboratories across the United States, the Department of Energy laboratories, are basically similar to this island in the sense that they are a test bed for integrated renewables. So Hawaii is a real world test bed for integrated renewables, and we're ready to take the next step and start integrating hydrogen into the mix here.
Wow. Well, I can't thank you enough, Chuck. We really hit the nail on the head and clarified this. And folks, what you're looking at back here may just look like a parking lot, but in the near space of time, just as that Hitachi EV charging system was one of the earliest, probably EV charging systems in Maui County, anywhere in the world, we're going to have one of the earliest, one of the newest hydrogen facilities right here. Imagine the carports. You see the ocean in the background. You got the wind right there. It's all happening right here in Maui. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
All right, aloha, buddy.
Thanks, Josh.